from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CyberHub Podcast. We're wrapping up this week, Thursday, September 8th, 2022. A lot to talk about today, so we won't waste too much time. No cup of coffee. I do have a Celsius. I couldn't get it. I didn't want to do a Celsius with y'all. It's a coffee cup cheers, not Celsius cup cheers. So with that being said, whatever you're drinking this morning, I hope you enjoy it. You make it yours. Please make sure to subscribe, share these episodes with people who you think would get value out of these as practitioners. Let's get into today's show with our top story. And we've got a lot of these, but the second largest U.S. school district in LA has been hit by ransomware. So the LA Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the U.S., disclosed a ransomware attack on its IT systems over the weekend. It enrolls more than 640,000 students, spanning from kindergarten through the 12th grade. It includes Los Angeles and 31 smaller municipalities, as well as several Los Angeles County unincorporated sections. The school district first revealed district-wide technical issues after discovering that the attackers disrupted access to the LAUSD systems, including email servers. Roughly 7 hours later, it was confirmed to be a cyber attack, tagging the incident as criminal in nature. They are working with federal agencies and law enforcement as part of an ongoing investigation. And I haven't seen a root cause yet. I've read a lot about this. I haven't yet seen how this got in. But they're saying that this is predominantly IT and not really having anything to do with payroll or anything else. They are saying that this could impact, some operations, but really very little. Their business continuity plan for something like this would come into play here. Again, what's the purpose of this? Disrupting California. Again, rolling blackouts, ransomware attacks, seems to be a trend nowadays. Zyxel patches critical vulnerabilities in the NOS firmware. So Zyxel has released patches for a critical severity vulnerability impacting the firmware of multiple network-attached storage devices. The security defect, which has been tracked as CVE 2022-34747, carries a CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10 and is publicly documented as a format string vulnerability impacting Zyxel NOS 326 firmware and versions prior to version 5.21 or AAZF.12. An attacker could exploit the vulnerability by sending a specially crafted UDP packet to the affected products. Successful exploitation of the bug could allow an attacker to execute arbitrary code on the impacted device, according to the company. The patch is in place now, and so make sure you get these devices patched up. Cisco won't fix an authentication bypass zero-day in end-of-life router. I think this goes to a greater story, which is if you have end-of-life inventory, time to really get it out of there. The zero-day bug known as CVE 2022-209-23 is caused by a faulty password validation algorithm that attackers could exploit to log into the VPN on vulnerable devices using what the company describes as crafted credentials. The IPsec VPN server feature is enabled. A successful exploit could allow the attacker to bypass authentication and access the IPsec VPN network, according to the Cisco alert on Wednesday. They've gone on to say that upgrade to newer router models rather than patch this one, and probably the root cause there is how many of these are out there versus the cost of doing it. They're saying if you want to continue to use these models, take your own risk, otherwise come upgrade. And chances are that ROI right there is the decision behind it. North Korean Lazarus hackers take aim at U.S. energy providers. The North Korean APT group is exploiting the VMware Horizon servers to access corporate networks of energy providers in the U.S., Canada, and Japan. Lazarus is a state-backed actor known for conducting espionage, data theft, and crypto stealing campaigns over the past decade. They're responsible for hundreds of sophisticated attacks internationally, according to researchers at Cisco Thales, who uncovered the latest operation. Lazarus targeted the energy operation between February and July of this year, leveraging public VMware Horizon exploits for initial access. From there, they used custom malware families like vSingle and Yamabot, and previously unknown RATs named Magic Rat that is used to search for and steal data from infected devices. Symantec analyzed the same campaign, and Cisco's report goes deeper to unveil many more details about the threat actors' activity. They presented several TTPs that highlight the versatility of the sophisticated group. In the first case, the threat group exploited the VMware servers vulnerable to Log4Shell flaws to run shellcode that establish a reverse shell for running arbitrary commands on the compromised endpoints. Since VMware Horizon runs with high privileges, Lazarus can deactivate Windows Defender via registry key modification, WMIC, and PowerShell commands before deploying vSingle. The vSingle backdoor supports advanced network reconnaissance commands, prepares the ground for stealing credentials, creates new admin users on the host, and finally establishes a reverse shell connection to a C2 to fetch all the data they could possibly want to get their hands on. In the second case, which concerns a different victim, the initial access and reconnaissance followed similar pattern, but this time they dropped the Magic RAT along with vSingle. Thales published a separate post on Magic Rat yesterday detailing all the functions of the previously unseen Trojan. Magic Rat can establish persistence on its own by executing hard-coded command that create the required scheduled tasks, help in system reconnaissance, fetch additional malware from the C2 like Tiger RAT. In the third intrusion, Lazarus deploys Yamabot, a custom malware written in Go, featuring standard RAT capabilities like list files and directories, send process information to C2, download files from remote locations, execute arbitrary commands on the endpoints, and uninstall itself. The Japanese CERT linked Yamabot with Lazarus in July of this year, highlighting its encrypted C2 communication capabilities. North Korea continues to be a challenge for so many. Chinese hackers are targeting government officials in both Europe, South America, and the Middle East. China, North Korea, Iran. You're starting to see this alliance over the last 2 years now really gain some steam from a cyber perspective, creating a lot of disruption and a lot of issues. And they've really stepped that up. I mean, publicly, they've stepped it up. Not to say that they didn't do this previously. They did, obviously. I've been doing the show for 4 years, been talking about China, Iran, and North Korea more than I'd ever like to in these matters. But I can tell you that now you're starting to see that real increase, and that's because there's an unknown kind of type of response that's come along here, where they think they can do that. And with Russia being busy with the Ukraine, North Korea, China, and Iran are stepping up to fill that gap. So no questions there. So the Chinese hacking group has attributed a new campaign aimed at infecting government officials in Europe, the Middle East, and South America with a modular malware known as Plug X. SecureWorks said it identified intrusions in June and July, once again demonstrating the adversaries' continued focus on espionage against governments across the world. Bronze President is a China-based threat actor, active since at least 2018, and is likely estimated to be a state-sponsored group that leverages a mix of proprietary and publicly available tools to compromise and collect data from its targets. It's got a slew of names like Mustang Panda and whatnot, but earlier this year, the group was observed targeting Russian government officials with an updated version of this, and we talked about that several months ago with the onset of the war. We saw that China was taking advantage of that to gain a ton of reconnaissance from Russia, and now they're doing that across the entire world. This goes to another story. What does this have to do with cyber? Well, it's the first time a country's ever cut ties with another one due to a cyber attack. Albania has cut diplomatic ties with Iran over the July cyber attack that crippled the country and all of its government staff. The NATO member is the first known country to cut diplomatic relations over a cyber attack with Iran. Iran's also has a lot of destabilizing factors in Albania. A ton of it, they promote a more extremist type of Islam there as well. To a country that predominantly was not very, very religious. So the Muslim Brotherhood kicked out of Iran, kicked out of Albania now, and they were given 24 hours to leave, cutting diplomatic ties, and chances are you'll see them cut travel visas and a whole slew of other things there. Iran on Wednesday condemned the diplomatic expulsion, calling the action ill-considered and short-sighted. Iran has its back against the corner. From one position, they're trying to negotiate a new nuclear deal. From the other one, they're prepping to know that there's no way the deal in its current format will survive not only maybe the next leadership in this country, but additionally the regional alliance that's been formed because of Iran between the Israelis, the Saudis, the Emiratis, and so forth, to launch a counter attack, essentially, and take out their nuclear facilities. Iran is preparing for a potential airstrike. By the way, they've moved, all kinds of air defense systems across all of their nuclear power plants and strategic military places, and so the chimes of war are going on here, folks. North Korea, China, now Iran, and goes to the last story of our day here. Microsoft is warning of ransomware attacks by Iranian Phosphorus hacker group. On Wednesday, Microsoft's Threat Intelligence Division assessed that the subgroup of the Iranian threat actor known as Phosphorus is conducting ransomware attack as a form of moonlighting for personal gain. So while they're getting ready, they're trying to get funded, knowing where Iran is headed towards in the event this deal is signed. There's the head of the Mossad was in Washington, D.C. and Europe talking about this. There's a lot of pullback because the Iran nuclear deal really doesn't stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. It just postpones it, and that's not a good deal. If you're going to get a deal done, you want to stop them from getting nuclear weapons. No one wants this government, this leadership to have that, because if they do, then you can imagine that a lot of these other countries in the Middle East will also need to gain nuclear capabilities. And let me just say that a nuclear Middle East may not be a good one for the globe, for the world, and for the region as a whole. So access to the compromised network. So Dev 0270 is known to scan the internet to find servers and devices susceptible to flaws in Microsoft Exchange servers, Fortinet, FortiGate, SSL, VPN, and Apache Log4j for initial access. Then it does network reconnaissance and credential theft activities. Access to the compromised network is achieved by establishing persistence via scheduled task, then escalates privileges to the system level, allowing it to conduct post-exploitation actions such as disabling Microsoft Defender antivirus to evade detection, lateral movement, and file encryption. So that's Iran on the move, folks. That's it for our show today. We'll be back on Monday with a whole lot more. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.